Hello, my name's Alex Dyer. I'm the Canon of the Ordinary here in the Episcopal Church in Colorado, here with another Canon Conversation. I'm here today talking about what evangelism and church growth looks like in the age of COVID. So I have two wonderful guests joining today, one local and one not so local, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves. Hillary, do you want to start off?
I'd be delighted. And thanks for having me on today. I'm Hillary Raining. I'm the rector of St. Christopher's Church in Gladwin, Pennsylvania. I'm also the founder and director of The Hive, which is an online spiritual community and wellness group. And we are trying a lot of bold new things. So I can't wait to talk about that today.
Awesome. Thank you, Hillary. Matt.
I'm Matt Holcomb, rector of St. Michael's Episcopal Church here in Colorado Springs. And I have been here about 5 months since February, right before the pandemic. So it has been an interesting 5 months, to say the least.
I'll bet. We're glad to have you here in Colorado. Maybe we can get Hillary here one day. We'll see. So,
absolutely. I'll bring my skis.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. So I've had a lot of conversations with priests just around what it looks like. And I think initially when this set in, we thought it was only going to be for a time. And, we didn't really kind of think too heavily about it. But now that we're kind of settling into this and we realize this could be in for the long run, a year even from now, or 18 months, or we don't really know what that looks like. How do we cultivate kind of a digital community, especially around thinking in particular evangelism and church growth? And I see those as two different things. How do you do that digitally, and what does that look like? Realizing that even post-COVID, a lot of churches now are talking about we're going to do something kind of a hybrid model. We're going to have to do things differently. So who wants to start?
Matt, since I went first, would you like to go?
Well, I was going to say ladies first, but I was going to say that I think it's easier to do church shopping now than it's ever been in the history of Christianity. In literally from the comfort of someone's home on a Sunday morning or any day during the week, people can watch worship services and participate in communities all across the country and all across the globe. And so I think when I think about evangelism, I think, how are we reaching people and meeting people where they are today? Whether they're at home, on their back patio, in the hospital, in a rehab, visiting family and friends, how can we, St. Michael's, as a church, how can we reach people where they are at that given moment? And there are more tools that we have in this age of COVID than we've ever had before, because a lot of the old things that people used to hold on to in the church, they have had to let go over the past couple of months, which has allowed us to think and dream and follow the Spirit in ways that we never could have imagined. I just had this conversation the other day with our senior warden. Could you ever imagine when you guys called me as rector that we would be doing this now? And she's like, no, we had no clue. And I was like, great, I didn't either. So let's go. So that's what I think. I mean, when I think about evangelism now, it means something much different than it did even 6 months ago or a year ago.
Absolutely. I'll jump in with it right there. I find that we have this delightful challenge of flying the airplane as we're building it, that expression, especially with evangelism, thinking about how this time frame is a chance for us to finally help people believe that the church is not just the building, but the people, the body of Christ. The week after Pentecost, I was sitting in the church building alone, just, typing up a sermon. And I heard this crazy, frantic sound of a bird trapped somewhere in the building. And I went searching for her. I found her, the poor thing, in a trapped stairwell. Had to, finagle getting her out, but she was frantic. And to me,
please don't tell me it was a dove, because that was
no. But you see where I'm going with it already. This idea that this model for the Holy Spirit, because in my mind that's where it was going, has been maybe perhaps even trapped, just waiting for us to leave the building and share this amazing love with God. So to view it as an opportunity, a time for innovation, really falls in line with what we've been trying to do at our church by saying, if we were going to do something that wasn't just for the people here in the pews, what would it be and how would we do it? And that's been an incredible question to be answering in this time. I also think where we're situated in history, in Christian history, is really critical. Every 500 years or so, the church goes through this time of reformation and change. And Martin Luther was well over 500 years ago. And so we're in the middle of the start of this new time frame. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't you know it, the Holy Spirit had some ways to really kickstart us into change gear. So I expect great reformation and resurrection through this time.
Mm. And I think part of resurrection is it's not resuscitation, right?
Correct.
It's going to look different. It's going to be different. There'll be some familiar things of our past, and yet things will look boldly different.
Something has to die before it can resurrect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hillary, when you were talking about the bird that you trapped in your church, we just recently we launched a campaign called Beyond Our Walls. And it's going to allow us to do things beyond our walls that we never could have done before. And although it's a fundraiser, it's also turned into what's going to be our theme for the next several seasons, because the walls mean something different and we can't use them in the same way. We have all these gorgeous buildings across our country that are sitting completely empty. And we're thinking, what does that look like for us? I mean, how could we use our building in a way that we've never used it before because we couldn't? Because, the church was there for Sunday. The
Yep.
church was there so that, everyone could sit in their assigned pews and, do what they needed to feel close to God. But now those boundaries are being pushed. And some people are really embracing it, what I'm finding in our community, and others are like, I'm not too sure yet. But even some of those, I'm not too sure yet, over the past couple of months, some of them have come along to go, okay, I think I could do church in my pajamas. I've encouraged them to dress up and put on their church hat if they want, but it's an opportunity that I know you, Hillary, you're ahead of the curve on this and the community that you've been building online. And in many ways, I'm still crawling and learning a lot. And it's been baptism by, fire and water all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been great.
So Matt, I think you've named something that's critical, is that parishes have to be willing to put some resources to this. Yeah. And that includes even thinking about how are you going to make your digital ministries attractive to people who are doing that church shopping that you wisely mentioned, Matt. The people tune in, and if the audio is not good, they'll tune right out. If the video isn't at least a certain level of quality, they turn out. And clergy, by and large, did not go to seminary to learn how to become a video production company or a digital design. And yet there are ways to build that even within the church. So our congregation, for example, just put in a new camera, a new sound system. I know that's exactly what you're building towards, Matt. And it was costly, but we're already feeling as though it's the ministry before us. And so we need to embrace that and change some of the funding for what we might have been doing otherwise. I think it's probably the best way to start the evangelism conversation is saying, where are resources going?
Yeah. We found Hillary just from when we did have a technical problem, half the people dropped off and never came back. Even though we were like, if we have problems, just log back in 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 30 seconds. And half of those people just said, I'm going to move on.
Wait the 30 seconds.
Yeah. Like I'm going to go move on to the next church that has working audio and video and that I can see. So sorry, Alex, but I just,
no, it's great. So, I think what I'm kind of thinking about in this conversation is I think all that's important, the technical stuff, and we have varied parishes with certain amount of resources. I can kind of do that too. I think, authenticity is very much a part of it as well. but even that, even if you have, you know, the best, you know, you're a Grace Cathedral or Washington National Cathedral or whatever too, or even our own cathedral here, has pretty good resources to do all that stuff. How do we turn it from becoming a spectator sport, which can happen, I would say, I would put footnote, even in an in-person worship, right? People can come back of the pew and never really kind of engage. But I think it's even more prevalent or more likely, shall we say, in a virtual kind of space. How do you move somebody from that simply spectating, do I want to come with the person with the best sermon or the best music or the best whatever, to really kind of cultivating a parishioner and building community?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in with an example, if I might. One of the exciting things that we've been noticing, especially with part of the digital evangelism we do on the Hive, is that people are very hungry right now for kind of a deep dive, but they may not know how to find it. So the church service has become a great way to say, if you are feeling called right now to do something in God's world, but you don't even know what, come and join this group. Like, and the one, we have two of these, what we're calling wisdom groups going right now, which are people from, one from the parish that has people from all over the world, and then one from all over the world that has people from the parish in it, right? You know, the makeup of both kind of weighted a little differently. And what we're finding is with that question, people flocked to it. I mean, we have more participation in these online small wisdom groups because it's naming what's real for so many people, that they are feeling called, but they maybe don't know how to go deeper. And it's been an incredible opportunity to teach people spiritual practices, to teach group discernment work. And they've met people they've never known because they live across the country, or because they never had the time on a Sunday morning to really get to know somebody. So that's one small way, but I actually find doing that small group intentional work works extremely well on Zoom, because people they're able to be in their comfort zone in their homes, and it works lovely.
And we're doing a couple things, because, you know, that conversion isn't probably the appropriate word to use, but, you know, how do you translate people who are just finding you into, you know, parishioners or part of your community? And so on our website, a couple months ago, we realized people were coming out and trying to find out more about our community and, you know, what we were doing. So what we did was created a pop-up that asked for them to input their email address. And that's for everyone. You know, you can click no thank you, and for 30 days it won't pop up again if you visit our website. But what we're able to do is now target people who have come to our website from all over the country, from, you know, our backyard, and reach back out to them. You know, having our coordinator for newcomer ministry send them a short email that says, you know, hey, I know you're on our website, hope you found what you were looking for. If not, you know, please reach out, we'd love to get to know you. And we are getting great feedback from that. And surprisingly, we hosted a newcomer Zoom party with the rector last night, and we had 17 newcomers join this conversation, and it was great. You know, some of them had shown up a week before we closed for the pandemic, or a month before, and others since then that have found us. And so, you know, I think one of the things I heard Hillary talk about is this innovation. And I think it's those parishes who are willing to be massively innovative during this time that are going to, you know, just yield a harvest that they're not going to know what to do with. You know, my prayer through this that I heard from one of my colleagues here in Colorado Springs was that my hope is when we get on the other side of this, we're going to be more connected than before the pandemic occurred. And I think by being intentional, creating these wisdom groups, creating these small group opportunities for parishes, whether you do community by zip code, or, you know, we started this thing like Picnic with a Priest, where people can bring a lunch outside in a lawn chair and everyone wears a mask and sits 10 feet apart. We just sit with each other. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a great turnout. You know, people who are married, they brought their kids, you know, they live by themselves. But it's just been a place where they can come back to the church in a different way that they never would have done 4 months ago.
I like that one, man. I'm going to steal that. That's a good one. I mean, borrow.
Yeah,
Contextualize, adapt. Yeah, and the crazy thing about this is what I hear you guys saying is innovative, or I would even say like take risks. And the paradoxical thing is risks are not even as risky, I think, during these times online. You can be a little bit more experimental. I mean, the sense of, from your home, you don't have to go set up chairs and do a part of this and figure out how many people can come. You just kind of be a little bit more inventive. But unfortunately, some people haven't leaned into that. And I think it's, people are different places, and part of it is people are just realizing that it's going to be in for the long haul, and that some people are not as necessarily receptive to technology or whatnot too. But what advice would you give a priest who was maybe initially kind of felt overwhelmed with this? You all kind of maybe had some previous experience in this, or at least kind of took to it a little bit more easily. But there may be priests out there, maybe here in Colorado, maybe in Pennsylvania, who are struggling with this and figuring out where to kind of start and how to even like build a community, and I would say may not even have the resources that you guys have. What's some simple ways?
I can tell you one of the things my spiritual director told me after several sessions, when I had come to her saying, gosh, I just don't know that we're getting any traction. I'm really worried about this is not working. We had these hard conversations online, et cetera. And she said, you're going to have to make friends with mediocrity in this time frame. She stopped me up short when she said that. She goes, this is a desert time. You're in the wilderness. This is not a time for you to think you're going to be putting out the best and the polished. And even the learning curve of just trying to figure out the technology of it all is tremendous. So I honestly want people to be as gentle with themselves as they can be, so that they'll have the energy to try innovation. Innovation takes a huge amount of courage and vulnerability. And without the energy to do that, you won't, you can't, because we're living in a pandemic. We're all trying to stay alive, right? If you think back to those Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're not very high up on that actualization scale. And it's worth remembering that and being gentle with yourself while you're making friends with mediocrity in the desert.
And I would say you're not alone. I mean, 5 months ago when I showed up at St. Michael's, we had never live streamed a service ever. I had never live streamed a service. And 6 weeks later, when we're closing down our church, and I'm like, how do we stay connected? How do we do church without like a building and people and all these things that we're used to? And I have to say, I got on the phone and started calling people. Seeing what other churches were doing, calling my colleagues here in Colorado Springs, calling people that I knew, calling Hillary, calling people I've known, and just asking. And I have to say the Diocese of Colorado has great resources. And I know many dioceses, if you're watching this, there are resources in your diocese that can help. The communications director, Mike Orr, was fantastic. And I had never done a live stream service. And after talking to him and several others and watching a lot of YouTube, we tried it. And people may look at Hillary and I, Hillary's much younger than me, by the way, but people may look at us and go, oh, they're young, they can figure it out. But I didn't come to St. Michael's with this knowledge, with this toolbox in my hand. It's one that, once I was here and the pandemic started, you open the toolbox and you realize I have nothing. And then you reach out. And I think reaching out during this time is more important than ever, because it's helped me be reminded that I'm not alone, that what I'm struggling with and what I'm having a challenge with, there are other people out there, my colleagues, near and far, that are struggling with the same stuff. So just try and fail. I mean, just try it. And you might succeed, so go out there and fail. That would be my recommendation. Yeah,
I love that, Matt. And I'll also say too, the reaching out, the Diocese of Pennsylvania has created this thing for summer jobs for people who are of, let's say, college age, who have a lot of technical know-how, that they're paying those people to go out into different congregations and help them set some stuff up, which is, I think, just a great idea. They've done a lot of great stuff. But it's also true that you can use some of the stuff that other people are creating for your parish too, right? Not everybody has to recreate this wheel. Even I even say, dare I say, live streaming. Not every parish has to live stream. We have all sorts of ways to worship together. And that's the great thing about being the Episcopal Church. We're a network together. We're the body of Christ in this big, beautiful way. And we don't even have congregations in the Episcopal Church. We have parishes, right? You know, like not individual congregations, but part of one body. And so I couldn't agree with you more, Matt. Reaching out, it's the best.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it really depends here in Colorado, as I suspect again in Pennsylvania, that, you know, some congregations have said Zoom just works better, you know, for us. And they're all kind of figuring it out, what works best. I think a lot of them are thinking of switching it up. I've talked to people now in the sense of, how do I keep it interesting now that we're not going to do this for just 2 or 3 months, you know, and thinking ahead to what is Christmas going to look like? What is all this kind of stuff going to look like, and how do I get there, and what changes do I need to make? And yeah, I would just echo Matt's comment, you know, feel free to fail. I think we hold ourselves to a lot higher standard. And I think one thing I hope what we're letting die, you know, we talked about kind of like, you know, resurrection, is our need for perfection in worship and our preciousness kind of around that. I think quality is important. I think we should, you know, pay attention to it too. But, you know, I think this invites us into a space that is a little bit different, that we can be a little bit more innovative and, you know.
Yeah, I would just add that one of the things I've been reading in this time where so many of us are trying to up our game educationally with social justice readings, one of the things I've read that really kind of opened my eyes was that perfectionism is one of the marks of a system that is a white supremacist system. So when we're so into this idea that it has to be perfect, which isn't the same thing as healthy striving, right? You know, it's this idea that it has to be just right, and next time even better than the next. We're actually falling victim to the same sort of supremacy that is baked into the old way. So why do it?
And that perfectionism is, you know, to use Brene Brown's terminology, it's that external audit of, you know, I'm going to be perfect this time, because I want that external audit to look at our live stream or to look at this new amazing thing that we're doing. And I want people to say, that was amazing. Like, great job. You're doing a wonderful job. Keep it up. You're feeding people in new and amazing ways. But that is so detrimental, you know, that perfectionism. And I think, you know, part of what we can learn from our faith and from our rich history is that it's never been about perfectionism. It wasn't for Jesus. It wasn't for the disciples. But, you know, how can you do that striving for excellence, or, you know, as Hillary said, mediocrity? You know, or we even gave you another option: strive for failure. So whether you want to take failure, mediocrity, or excellence, I mean, you have your pick. But
if you want failure, you can be like Matt. If you want mediocrity, you can be like Hillary.
Exactly, the smorgasbord there.
but it's that moving, you know. And I think that there's a movement that happens with all of those, and it reminds us that we have to get moving as a church, especially now.
It's well done, good and faithful servant, not well done, good and successful servant, right? You know, and that's why I say so much. Remember, you're in the desert. It takes rest. It takes Sabbath. How's your prayer life going? I find that I'm much more creative and innovative when I am actually getting on my yoga mat, when I'm actually doing the breathing that I need to do, etc. So if your Sabbath is lacking, I think your energy for this and your ability to be an evangelist goes downhill. So absolutely.
Well, thank you all for this. I mean, I just think it's been a great conversation. Weaved in Brene Brown, weaved in, you know, all kinds of great stuff. So thank you for that. I did not want to leave without, I mean, I'm sure people could Google it, but tell just 10 seconds about the Hive, and of course the URL.
Sure. It's at thehiveapiary.com. And the beautiful thing about the Hive is we also have a Facebook page that is very active with conversation, but it's really there to support spiritual practices and wellness, something that is desperately needed in this time. So if you're working on social justice, if you're working on trying to keep your sanity, if you're working on trying to find community, you can find it at the Hive, and we'd love to have you there.
Awesome. So we'd love to people from Colorado to join it. And thank you to Matt for all the good work that you're doing in this diocese in Colorado Springs. We appreciate that. And thank you all for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.